Hi, my name is Bob Warach, and we call this series The Docket. We'll be discussing legal issues that affect the borderland and often the country as a whole. Our hope is to present these issues in a clear and concise and understandable format, but as always, I need to make the disclaimer that neither I nor anyone else involved in the program is giving legal advice. These programs are informational only and hopefully will spur conversation about the topics we discuss. For those of you who are new to our viewing audience, I want to let you know that we tape our programs at the El Paso Community College television studio and depend on the college not only for the physical space it provides, but also for the intellectual and educational support it gives us. So thank you, EPCC, and let's get started. Our guests today are Vanessa Luna, who's been involved with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, also known as MAD, for the past 18 years. Sergeant Jaime Esparza, who serves on the DWI task force for the police department and has been with that task force for 15 years. And returning as a guest is Ray Duke, who's been with the district attorney's office for 17 years. I want to thank all of you for coming, and let's get started. Ladies first. So Vanessa, let's start with you. Let me ask a little bit about your background. Are you from El Paso?
I am from El Paso. Thank you first for having me here, but I am born and raised here in El Paso, Texas.
Very neat. And how did you get involved with Mothers Against Drunk Driving?
I started with MAD 18 years ago as a part-time administrative assistant. Through there, I was able to work through my education, started here at El Paso Community College.
Right?
Yeah, I did, and got my master's from in counseling from Sulros University. And so through that, I was able to work through my career through the organization of MAD.
And so what do you do for them now?
I am a program manager for the organization.
Okay, and how is it, it's a nonprofit. Is there a chief executive officer? I mean, tell us a little bit about the actual structure.
We are a nonprofit organization. So Texas is composed of 6 different areas. And so we do have a regional director that is housed out of the Austin, San Antonio area.
And but what made you interested in working for MAD?
You know, I really didn't know much about the organization when I applied for the position, but through working with the organization, I have been able to meet a lot of positive families who have gone through something so tragic. And so one of the reasons that I continue to work through MAD is because through their darkness, we're able to find light. And so we're able to help these families through something that is very dark at that time.
MAD really brought to the forefront how serious DWI is. It's not just, oh, everybody does it, everybody drives when they're drunk. They really pointed out what the consequences are.
Absolutely. I think when we look at the families who have been involved through our organization, there is so much pain. There is a lot of loss, not only through individuals who have been killed, but also those who have survived and through their injuries. And we want to be able to continue to tell our stories so that we can prevent future drunk driving crashes.
How do you do that?
You know, we have a MAD Victim Impact Panel that we have once a week on Friday evenings that we host at El Paso Community College, and it is court mandated for DWI offenders to be able to attend these classes where they're able to hear the story, able to see the faces of individuals who have been impacted.
So I don't know if you saw the last program we did when Ray actually was on with the Judge Anchondo. Do you have anything to do with his program?
We work with Judge Anchondo. We do have a specialized MAD Victim Impact Panel class where we do have a victim that provides their testimony to a small group of their graduates on how they've been impacted, so that we want them to remember that it's not just the fines, it's not just the jail time, that there are actual victims behind this crime.
And who started MAD?
MAD was founded in 1980 by a grieving mother. Her name was Candy Leitner, and through her grief, we have been now thriving for the last 38 years now. And so it's unfortunate that our organization still exists just because drunk driving is 100% preventable, but we're here to provide that support to families.
The judge off camera had said to me there's like 1.5 million drunk driving arrests in Texas.
That's probably about right, Bob.
Yeah.
in El Paso alone, we file about 4,000 DWI cases in a given year. And you're talking to a lot of people in the state of Texas, so that doesn't surprise me, frankly.
But I was surprised by that. I mean, that is a huge, huge number. Is MAD national?
It is a nationwide organization.
What about international?
We do have an office out of the Canada area.
Okay.
Yes,
So it's basically North America?
it is North America.
Anything in Mexico?
We don't have anything in Mexico, but there was a crash just recently where there was a family that was injured as a result of a drunk driving crash in Juarez, Mexico. And so we've reached out to those family members that do reside here in El Paso
Right.
to make sure that we're providing them with those free services as well.
And how do you get it out to the community that you're here, you're available, the services you provide? How do you go about that?
Well, I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to be able to share our information about the organization and services, but it's really, community support and public support, being able to provide our information at free presentations, informational health fairs, that we are here and all of our services are at no cost.
Now, you're sitting here with Ray Duke and Sergeant Jaime Esparza. Do you interact with them
We do.
in what you do?
We do. We're really great partners. We support law enforcement, El Paso Police Department, and the DWI Task Force, and as well as the District Attorney's Office. We work really well in connection with the DA's office in providing families with the support that they need. They have a great victim services team that they have available, and we work hand in hand with them.
And is MAD, when I say is it political, do you talk to the legislature? Do you try and get laws passed?
We do, yeah. So we're gearing up for our 2019 legislative session. Right now, we don't have our legislative efforts set yet. We're working with our national team to go ahead and see what we're going to be doing for Texas. But every year, we do go and speak with our legislators to try to make DWI law stronger. This last year in 2017, we pushed all ignition interlocks for all DWI offenders, and we were happy to say that it did pass. And so one step at a time, we are going out there trying to make a difference.
Good, great. Sergeant, what is the task force?
Well, it consists, as you said, of 10. Now we've increased the unit. So right now we have 10 added officers that are out there patrolling every night. So that puts us over, and then 2 more sergeants. So that puts us at about 22 of us that are out on any given night, 7 days a week, 7 nights a week, basically looking for drunk drivers and also responding to crashes that possibly involve drunk drivers. So that's what our activity is that specific.
And you've been doing it for 15 years.
I've been on the police department 15 years, but as an officer, I was on the task force, and I'm the sergeant now. For 13 of those 15 years, I've been committed to this cause.
So do you get special training?
Yes. Well, all officers on the department are, patrol officers are arresting DWIs.
Right.
If they do their traffic stops. So we're all SFST with standard field sobriety tests certified to conduct a roadside test.
When you say all, you're talking about every policeman in El Paso.
Correct.
Okay.
Every policeman in El Paso in our academy go through the course to be certified.
And then, what is the street? Say that again. The street sobriety.
The
test?
standard field sobriety test.
Okay. Standard field sobriety test. What does that consist of?
What it consists of, it's basically a divided attention test, and that's what we do at the roadside. And basically what it kind of does is it kind of mirrors what is required when you're out on the roadway driving. And what it does, it's a divided attention where your mental faculties and your physical faculties have to work together in order to be driving safely down the road. So these tests basically start with a series of instructions on what the driver or the subject has to listen to, comprehend these instructions, and then physically actually have to perform them.
Is this the business about having to walk a straight line and that sort of stuff?
Right. There's one that starts off with the HGN test, which I won't get too technical about it, but you'll see them where they check the eyes, and then there's the walk and turn, as you said, And then there's a one-leg stand where they raise one leg off the ground. And,
Now, that would be hard for me, even sober, so I don't know.
well, some of them actually say that. I couldn't do this if I was sober,
Yeah.
So that kind of gives the indication they're intoxicated.
Well, I'm telling everybody right now, though, I couldn't do it while I was sober. But what do you have to do to become a member of the task force, though?
Well, 10 of the officers have been pulled from the regions, the 5 regions that we have,
Right.
to come
In regions in El Paso?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. From the police department, and those are changed out every couple of months. So we have fresh officers, and then of course, the officers that are permanently there at the DWI task force is you're there because you want to be. You put in for it. And then you go through a series of, you go through an interview process, and then we select from that pool to do that on a permanent basis.
So you said you were the sergeant now?
Yes.
Which means what? Are you the boss?
Well, I'm a supervisor I'm out there, as an administrator, but also out in the field,
Okay.
doing the same type of job.
So when you say you patrol around the city, are there different areas of the city that are more prone to have DWI offenses?
Well, it's citywide. The problem is everywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere there's a roadway. We'll concentrate in high, what we call bar areas, which is typical for concentration of drunk drivers. So we'll concentrate areas of that nature. Arteries that are common, like freeways and the major roadways. So basically, we try to cover the city as much as possible.
And then on holidays, you're out there in force?
Right. Yeah. We definitely increase our enforcement. We also work with the Texas Department of Public Safety, and they bring in a lot of troopers on those holidays to actually help. And they come within the city because they typically work out in the highways, but they'll come inside the city and help us, which
Right.
makes a huge impact.
Now, you talked about the standard field sobriety test. I said that correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay. After that, do you go to the breathalyzer and the blood test and that sort of stuff?
Yes. What we do is we'll request either a breath or blood sample.
Right.
And like as we said, some cases both. And then we'll ask for consent for that breath test or blood. And then, of course, we'll take them to the station if it's a breath test. If it's a blood consent, then of course we'll take them to the county jail that has the nurse 24/7. And then of course if they refuse, then we will take them to a station, and then we work up a blood search warrant that we present to the magistrate.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me jump over to Ray for a minute, because I forgot to ask you this question when you were on the show. You had talked about the portable breathalyzers.
Yes, sir.
And they are not admissible in court. The results are not admissible in court, correct?
That is correct, Bob.
Why do it?
Well, you want to do it for 2 reasons. One, sometimes we have minors out there driving while they've been drinking. They may not be legally intoxicated, but we have an offense called minor detectable. So if you are under 21 years of age in Texas and you operate a motor vehicle and you have any detectable amount of alcohol in your system, it's a Class C offense. So what the officer is going to do on the side of the road is ask the driver to provide a breath sample into the portable instrument. And if that registers, we'll get a reading and we'll be able to document that in a report. Another reason, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier as well, sometimes people will be called to the scene to transport the defendant's vehicle back home, maybe family or friends. We want to make sure those people are sober when they come out. Sometimes, unfortunately, they have been drinking as well, and we don't want to give that car over unless we're sure that they're good to go. So we'll test those folks as well.
And to take that one step further, we talked about that, and this sounds like a bad TV show, reality show, but you said that sometimes somebody will drive a car over to either pick somebody up or do so, and they will be drunk.
Unfortunately, that has happened in
And
the
then they're
past.
arrested.
Absolutely.
I want to go back, though, to this minor detectable thing for a minute. If they don't have, there still has to be probable cause or a reason to stop them.
Reasonable suspicion.
To
yes.
stop them.
Correct.
So I'm trying to make sure this is clear for me. If it were someone over 21 and you stopped them and they didn't blow badly into the breathalyzer, they'd just go on their way. But because this person is a minor and is drinking before the legal age, that's why it becomes an issue.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, we won't give a portable breath test unless we already have done an investigation. Because if they're under 21, they can be arrested for DWI. So we do our same investigation because we're not sure at that point if they're intoxicated or not. So we'll do a standard field sobriety test, even if they're 18, 19, or whatever age.
Right.
And if we feel they pass that test and they're not at the .08 level, then we'll go to the next investigation, which, as Ray Duke said, is the Class C version.
Right.
And then that's when we'll do the PBT.
Right.
But which is not a DWI.
Correct.
It's driving, drinking underage or something.
Right.
Right. It's a minor detectable, and Sergeant Esparza is absolutely correct. If you're intoxicated and you're operating a motor vehicle, you're going to be arrested. You're going to be taken to jail. If you are pulled over and you pass the field sobriety test, but you still have alcohol in your system and you're under 21 years of age, you're going to be issued a citation for that offense.
Right.
And then you can't let them drive home either.
Correct.
Correct.
We were just singing happy birthday to her, and not even an hour or two later, she was gone.
In a blink of an eye, that drunk driver killed my daughter.
I really miss Jade. She just had a sweet spirit.
No family should have to endure the pain and heartache that we have.
My sister lost her life that day, and now I'll never be able to see her again.
Don't drink and drive. Plan while you can.
Okay, so then this is my next question. What about how, and this might get to some of the stuff Vanessa was talking about, how supportive let's talk about this minor detectable thing for a minute. How supportive are the families of you guys when you call them up and say, you gotta come get your kid, he was drinking and he's underage? Or do they think, oh, it's not a big deal?
I would have to let Sergeant Esparza speak to that because I don't speak with those families.
Well, we get, different reactions where, we'll get that my son couldn't have been drinking, and, they just don't, everyone has their little angel at home. And then, but the fact is, well, ma'am, it's 2 a.m. You probably should be home. I don't know how many angels are out at 1:30 in the morning flying around. But then there's those that are really upset and are going to be much better the discipline part than a Class C citation, that that they're going to handle the situation a lot better than we can or have the authority to do. So we deal with all types of situations and people.
Well, I think a lot of that is a social issue. It depends. I would think it depends on how the family views drinking, alcohol, drugs, and getting in a vehicle. And I mean, if the parents do it.
And sometimes you see that, Bob, in some of these cases, some of the higher profile cases, you may have a family that is very understanding of the charges against their son or their daughter. And you may have some that are just defiant.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to, hear about it at all. So it truly depends on the family dynamics that we're dealing with.
And the big thing that I see on a regular basis, and way too much, is a mentality of people in general in the community thinking that just drinking and driving is not a crime.
And that's where Vanessa comes in.
Right. And that's what they'll say is like, well, why aren't you out there really arresting the real criminals?
And and that was the point I was trying to make. When I started practicing law, that was the attitude.
Right.
That was the attitude. It's not everybody does it.
Right.
What are you picking on me for? What are you picking on my kid for?
Right.
And MAD, I think, has turned that around.
Right.
Or at least doing their best, because you're still running into it. but it's a real mindset.
Right, and it's difficult, and Ray could speak on that with the jury's mindset, because they're from the community and they have a lot of the mentalities that it's not.
Well, they wouldn't want me on that jury.
And that it's not a crime, or they're minding their own business, just having a few drinks and trying to get home type of thing.
But that's the key, trying to get home.
Right.
We have Uber, we have Lyft, we've always had taxis. Call up your parents.
Well,
call up a friend.
There are so many alternatives than to drive home while you're intoxicated. It's so easy to pick up a phone. It's so easy to install an app on your phone.
Yeah.
It's so easy to make plans before you go out. Make an appropriate decision before you go and drink.
Once we handcuff somebody, it's amazing how many options they have, saying, if you let me go, I could get my mom, I could get Uber, I could get my dad, I could get my girlfriend. You're like, it's amazing how these options show up, when he's like, well, why didn't you make that decision before you got in the car? Now it's too late.
Right. And it's a little bit, I view it a little bbit like putting on your seatbelt. Before you get in the car, if you're going to go out to dinner and have a drink, one of you shouldn't drink. Or if you're going out with other couples, then one night that couple gets to drink and you drive them home. The other night you get to drink and you drive them home. There are lots of things you can decide before you get in the car.
And that's the key. You need to decide before you go out, because once you go out and you start drinking, you will not make the right decision.
Right.
And the designated driver isn't the one that drank the least or is the less drunk.
It's the one that...
Because we get that.
Yeah.
I only had 8 beers. He had 16. But so
that's not a good designated driver.
They don't understand the concept sometimes.
Yeah. Well, let's go though to the sergeant said you have arguments in front of the jury. How do you diffuse, or how do you argue to a jury who's thinking, what's...
Well, it could be you on the roads. It could be your loved ones on the road that could get hurt. You've got to personalize it. And I tell you what, our juries have come a long ways here, and they are really good about that now. They see this go on too often, and they're very vocal about not liking this. And they will tell you in voir dire, jury selection, when we go out and we both sides get to speak to 50, 150 people, we get to get their views on DWI, and people are very upset about this situation, rightfully so, because they want to be able to get on the road, they want to be able to drive home safely.
I was going to say, they want to feel safe.
Exactly.
You hear about these tragedies where families are wiped out because somebody is going across the roadway and their blood alcohol level was just through the roof.
I have seen entire families wiped out by this. It's scary, and it's sad, because the happiest time of somebody's life ends up being the worst tragedy they've ever been through.
Yeah.
Right. And then the long-term effects too that aren't really measured, that they can't have a normal life anymore and provide for families because they have some physical impairment now that puts them in a different whole situation. And we see that way too much on a regular basis. The death is terrible in itself, but there's so much
that goes on,
and that Matt deals with the victims and people that weren't even there that are affected by it, that were home sleeping, that now have a family member that passed because of this decision to drink and drive, or the injuries that they're going to have to live with and go see therapists and doctors and all that for life, and you can't measure that.
And I'm assuming that everybody who gets picked up for DWI is not a bad person, and so now they've caused this incredible tragedy, and that's what they're carrying around for the rest of their life.
Some of the people that are arrested for intoxication manslaughter have never done any criminal offense. They have no criminal record.
Right.
And it's their first arrest. And they're maybe 18, 19, 20 years old. And now they've taken somebody's life because they made a bad decision. They have to live with it the rest of their life. They may have to even go to prison.
Right. So
it's a totally, like Vanessa said, it's a totally preventable crime.
Right.
Totally preventable.
Well, let's talk about, again, in the last program you were on, we were talking about some of the things that the court can order to somebody to comply with if they've been convicted or arrested. You have to have the ignition.
Interlock,
right.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about, I know I've read stuff about car manufacturers just putting it in cars. What do you think about that,
Well,
Vanessa?
I think we are getting there. In 2006, MAD launched our campaign to eliminate drunk driving, and one of the points was, looking at those autonomous vehicles where the technology is able to have sensors on the steering wheel to be able to read the molecules on our hands or even the breath molecules. So if individuals cannot make a good choice not to drink and drive, let's make vehicles that can. So I think we are definitely embracing technology, and we are looking forward to that point where it's there.
So explain. I got a little lost there. You were talking about autonomous vehicles. Those are the vehicles you don't have to drive it yourself.
Yes.
Okay. But why would you need the ignition interlock in that if the vehicle's fine? The vehicle's going to drive you home, right?
Yes.
So wouldn't you want the ignition interlock like in my car that doesn't have that? I have to drive it. That's what I was talking about.
Well, we have that option. So I think when we're looking at autonomous vehicles, technology has come a long way. But when we look at the way technology has progressed, we have vehicles and technology that is able to look at the steering wheel, and it's able to read the molecules on our hand to see if there's any alcohol, or it can also read the breath molecules from just the driver, where if the driver has any sort of alcohol in their breath, the vehicle would not start.
Are manufacturers doing this now?
I think maybe in prototypes. I don't know that it's necessarily, going out to the consumer at this point. Right. And I applaud that technology. Unfortunately, that addresses only alcohol. And in today's, we talked a little bit about this earlier, in off camera. In today's world, people are using prescription drugs, they're using illicit drugs, and they're becoming very intoxicated, very impaired. Unfortunately, the ignition interlock and the technologies that Vanessa has been speaking about, they don't really address those. I'm really hoping that in the future, we're able to address those situations.
So address both the alcohol and the drugs.
Absolutely.
And kind of have a preventable situation.
Absolutely.
And I view it, I remember when, you guys are probably all too young, but I took my first daughter home from the hospital without a seatbelt. There was no requirement.
Right.
My wife got in the car, they handed her the baby, and off we went. You can't do that anymore. And now it's just accepted. You get in the car, you put on a seatbelt. So even though they have this, and people did say, why should the government get involved in this? And why should they make me wear a seatbelt? And I think that would be an argument against this technology in cars, but the hell with it. It's going to protect the community.
Well, you see a lot of things that it's just, technology is one thing, but it still comes down to the individual person making the right decision, because we have things in place, the interlock. Well, what do? They'll use somebody else's car. Or we've even had it where the technologies had to change, where they'll literally have a sober person blow into the instrument.
Really?
And the drunk driver is still behind the wheel. There's a mentality and stuff that has to change, and the prosecution is very important, where we make these people accountable, and we're important where we arrest these people, and one arrest will spread the word. My uncle so-and-so got arrested, and make it more of a reality. And then, of course, what MAD does, that's where the partnership is so important, that what we do is really when it comes down to, and people making better choices.
And, well, I think also that goes back to the conversation we had earlier. How is the family supportive or the friends supportive? Because if you're going to call your brother out and say, blow on this for me, so I can get in the car and drive, you haven't yet changed their mentality about drunk driving.
We'll arrest people that literally had court that same day on a DWI.
Come on.
No,
yes,
we just had that recently, or they're on probation for a DWI. And actually what you're doing here today is huge.
Good for me.
Because addressing this problem and opening it up and letting us speak about it. The realities this is a reality.
Yeah.
What I have to do is arrest people, and we show up. My officers and I show up to these cases where dead bodies are on a roadway that don't need to be. But you address an issue that people listening and watching this, if we can change one person, it was a success.
I think it's been a great show, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate it.
Thank you.